what was he doing before he came in flesh as a baby? I recommend this book. I read it when I was a teenager, I was way much too young to read it, but I was very intrigued by this idea. I read this book. So if you really want to get into deep speculation, you can read it. I disagree with some of the stuff in it, but I don't know, it's fun. And I'll be clear, like this teaching, I'm trying to convince you to read the Bible, the Old Testament, yourself with your own eyeballs. And I don't think this setting of me teaching the Bible to you is the best way for you to learn yourself. God has given you His Holy Spirit so that you can read the Bible yourself. So my goal here is to at least pique your interest enough so that you're like, oh yeah, I do want to understand this for myself by opening the Bible myself. So I am recommending books that are not the Bible with the goal that it might make you read the Bible. So I'll be clear about that too. Like, please don't read this book and then be like, oh yeah, now I understand what Jesus did in the Old Testament. Like, maybe you should read the Old Testament in conjunction with it. Because anyways, this is my rant, but like, I feel like Christians often read Christian books way more than they read the Bible, and I don't know, that's a shame. Or they rely on someone up front like me, like chewing the Bible for you and then giving it to you, like here you go, it's pre-chewed. You should learn to, eat the meat of the word yourself. So this is what I landed on. How are we supposed to anticipate God acting? Not only like the Jews anticipated the coming of Christ, but also we are supposed to anticipate what God is going to do in the world in the future. So this led me to Jeremiah. There is a memory verse people know in Jeremiah. There's one that anyone knows. If someone would like to volunteer, tell me what that verse is. It's Jeremiah 29:11. It's on all the graduation cards, it's on all the magnets. And if you've been in church long enough, some Bible nerd has said, hey, that's taken out of context. It doesn't apply to you. But they never actually say what the context is. So I'm going to read the context. It's in Jeremiah 25 and 29. We're reading two different passages with a 4-chapter break. I'm not going to read it. Jeremiah's talking about this exile that they're going to go on in Babylon. He says, this whole land will be a desolation and a horror, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Then it will be when 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, declares the Lord, for their iniquity in the land of the Chaldeans, and I will make it an everlasting desolation. And skip ahead to 29. So thus says the Lord, when 70 years have been completed for Babylon, I will visit you and fulfill my good word to you to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and will gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I've driven you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from where I sent you into exile. You might be reading this and be confused. Why is God doing this? Well, he actually said he was going to do it. In Leviticus, of all places. So if you've been reading the Old Testament, you will be reading this exile and be like, oh yeah, God already told him that he's going to do it. So I'll read this. He says, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you come, if you know, okay, Leviticus is like the third book of the Bible, fourth book of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, the third book of the Bible. So if you read the Old Testament, I actually encourage you to read it in chronological order, which is not the order the Old Testament is in. For some reason, it's organized by genre, which I guess makes it easy, but you can read this. And it says, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and the land shall have a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow the field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its crop. But during the 7th year you shall have a Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall not sow your field, nor prune your vineyard. You, however, I will scatter you among the nations and will draw out a sword after you. As your land becomes desolate and your cities become waste, then the land will enjoy its Sabbaths all the days of the desolation while you are in your enemy's land. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. In the days of its desolation, it will observe the rest which it did not observe on your Sabbaths while you were living in it. And then the author of 2 Chronicles connects these two passages in Jeremiah and in Leviticus. He says, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land enjoyed its Sabbaths all the days of its desolation, it kept Sabbath until 70 years were complete. So the author of Chronicles is reflecting on this exile and says, yeah, it's this Sabbath rest that the Jews did not observe for, I don't know, I guess you could do the math, 490 years. 77, they didn't do it. But honestly, in Jeremiah, God says that it's because of their idolatry and their, worshiping other gods. And in Leviticus, it says that too, like, because of your idolatry and worshiping other gods, I'm going to kick you out and stick you in Babylon. And you may be wondering why this has anything to do with Messiah, but I'm going to get to it. So you might ask, so what was the context for this Jeremiah 20:11? Who was it written for? It's not written for me in my graduation. Well, I can tell you. It was written for Daniel. And I know this because in Daniel 9, it says in the first year of Darius, and the son of Ahasuerus, by descent of Mede, who was made king over the realm of Chaldeans, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, perceived in the books the number of years that, according to the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet, must pass before the end of the desolation of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. So Jeremiah, who is now like 80-some years old, somehow perceived in the book of Jeremiah that it was going to be 70 years. I think he's a little overdoing it there. It says it's 70 years. And he decides, oh, just like Jeremiah said, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray to God, and he's going to relent. And so he has this crazy prayer. He goes through how the Jews have messed up time and time again. And he ends the prayer. He says, oh, our God, hear your servant's prayer. Listen as I plead. For your own sake, Lord, smile again on your desolate sanctuary. Oh, my God, lean down and listen to me. Open your eyes and see our despair. See how your city, the city that bears your name, lies in ruins. We make this plea, not because we deserve help, but because of our mercy. Oh, Lord, hear. Oh, Lord, forgive. Oh, Lord, listen and act. For your own sake, do not delay. Oh, my God, for your people and your city bear your name. So at the end of this prayer, that's what he says. He says, come on, God, you said you're going to do it. Let's do it. And guess what happens? An angel literally shows up and tells him, yeah, exile's going to end. And he goes on to tell him there's 70 weeks. And there's been crazy speculation on what these 70 weeks are. And I have seen people calculate the day of Jesus' death based on these 7 weeks. I can do the math for you, but we're not going to get into it today. But Daniel 9, literally, Daniel acts based on what he read in Jeremiah, and he prays, and then God responds, literally with an angel. There's a crazy thing about the angel fighting the prince of Persia, and Michael had to help him. It was pretty fun. I highly recommend reading Daniel. But you see here, Daniel read the Bible. He saw what God said he was going to do, and then he acted in line with it. And actually, he prayed a lot. If you recall, the reason Daniel got thrown in the lion's den is because he prayed. He said people were trying to trap him. There was a new king in Babylon. The Babylonian king was gone, and now it was Cyrus the Mede. And he was like, now Daniel, the administrators were saying, okay, for the next 30 days, everybody has to only pray to the king. And the king is like, yeah, that sounds good. That'll be a law now. And so then Daniel finds out about it, but he's like, no, I'm still going to go pray. He says, when he learned the decree had been published, he went to his home, to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God just as he'd done before. 3 times a day, he would pray towards Jerusalem. I wonder why he prayed towards Jerusalem. Well, he read it in 1 Kings 8. It says, when Solomon built the temple, he prayed this long, awesome prayer. And this is it in 1 Kings 8. He says, when the Jewish people sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin, and you become angry with them and give them over to their enemies, who take them captive to their own lands, far away or near. And if they turn back to you with all their heart and soul in the land of their enemies, who took them captive, and pray to you toward the land that they gave your ancestors, toward the city, and you have chosen, and the temple I have built for your name, yada, 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 you should relent and bring them back. And he says that. Solomon has said that at the beginning. So Daniel reads that, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to pray towards Jerusalem 3 times a day for this entire exile, because Solomon prayed that over the temple. So Daniel read his Bible, and he acted in line with what he thought God was going to do. He would pray earnestly that God would do something. Anyway, yeah, we should learn from Daniel. I'm going to talk about this interesting thing in the beginning of Daniel. So Daniel was looking back and trying to be obedient, but also, for some reason, Daniel is full of these prophecies looking forward to what is going to happen. And at the beginning of Daniel, it's kind of a parallel to the Joseph story. Nebuchadnezzar's like, oh, I had a dream. I need an interpretation. And they're like, oh, what's the dream? He's like, I'm not even going to tell you. So Joseph, everybody knew the dream and couldn't interpret it. Daniel is like the next level. He doesn't even know the dream. So Daniel's like, actually, I know the dream because God told me it. So he's like, Your Majesty looked, there before you stood a large statue, an enormous dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron, partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken up into pieces and became like chaff on the threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. So, that's weird. But Daniel goes on to give the interpretation. He said that the head was Nebuchadnezzar, and the chest was the next kingdom that turned out to be the Media Persia. The waist was the kingdom that came after that, turned out to be Greece. All these empires you learned in history class. And then the legs, he didn't know that this was going to be Rome. And then eventually the rock, next thing, this rock comes and smashes the statue. There's no trace left. It kind of symbolizes that this statue is like human rule. And Nebuchadnezzar was a human ruler, and then the Media Persia, they were human rulers. And if you read the Old Testament, you learn that human rulers kind of stink. They're not good. They don't give justice to the poor. They don't uphold the cause of the orphan and the widow. They cheat people. Their character is terrible. And so there is this angst, this growing angst, as you read the Old Testament, who has the right to rule? And God says, yeah, God does. But it's confusing because David was promised this king that was going to rule forever. In the Davidic covenant, it's in 1 Samuel 8. I don't know. You look at it. So it's kind of confusing. There's this picture that's growing of this Messiah who's going to rule forever. He's going to rule justly. And then you see this picture in Daniel. Yeah, a rock not made from human hands is going to smash the statue, leave no trace of these human kingdoms left. And this rock is going to become a mountain that's going to take over the whole world. It's just like this eternal kingdom of God. So it is interesting that in 63 AD, when the Romans invaded Jerusalem, and there was a lot of angst in the air because the Jews had read this passage and they knew, oh, Rome is here. This is the last kingdom before Messiah comes and puts an end to all of this. And so they were expecting Jesus to show up because they read Daniel. And actually, Josephus claimed, who was a Jewish historian, he claimed that when Alexander the Great invaded Jerusalem, Jadis, the high priest, welcomed him in and showed him the book of Daniel and said, yeah, we know you're going to invade. We knew that you were going to invade us and that you're going to go on to conquer a vast kingdom. And Alexander was like, oh, yeah, that's good. He sort of left Jerusalem alone and like, went on to go invade all of India. It's like, because the Jews had this confidence in the prophecies and what God said he was going to do, it gave them like an expectation that something was going to happen. And so you can see why the disciples and so many people expected Jesus to just like kick out the Romans, take over the world, set up this eternal kingdom. Come on. Because that's what Daniel 2 says. I'd like to talk about these great anticipators from Hebrews 11. We did Hebrews last year, but I wasn't here for it, so. They call it the Hall of Faith, but I'm calling it the great anticipators. I'm cutting out all of the content and just talking about the comments that the author of Hebrews makes about these people. So there's a lot of little stories about how Abraham went to a land he didn't know, how Enoch pleased God, how Abel had a better sacrifice. But I'm just cutting all that stuff out. We're just going to talk about these little comments that the author of Hebrews inserts in here about people who acted in faith. And hopefully we'll learn some stuff. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is a confidence of what we hope for and assurance we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, Abel and Enoch, yada, yada, yada. And without faith, it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So if you see, I think this is interesting. It says, without faith, it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and rewards those who earnestly seek him. So this verse says that faith includes believing that he exists and believing that he rewards those who seek him. So oftentimes people define faith as just believing something despite evidence against it, or faith versus sight. But it's actually, faith is believing what God has said and then acting like he's going to do something. It's based on the content of God's revelation, not based on our good feelings or our hope, just kind of this feeling that we drum up. But it's actually faith in facts that God has laid out in the Bible, right here. He inserts some more comments here too. He talks about Noah, he talks about Abraham. He says that Abraham was looking forward to a city with foundations whose architect and builder was God. He talks about Sarah. And then he says all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things they promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. So that's about Moses. He says that Moses regarded the disgrace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. So why am I talking about this? Well, the author of Hebrews, this is a New Testament book. Why is he saying yeah, these people are great? Is it just to be like, wow, the good old days? No, he's inserting these comments for our sake. He's saying we should be looking forward to the city with foundations whose architect and builder is God. We should be living as foreigners in the world. We should be longing for a better country, a heavenly one. We should be looking forward to our reward and regarding this grace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the riches of our homeland. He's saying this so that we are anticipating the end. We should be like them. So in Hebrews 12, famous little verse, he talks about the greatest anticipator. He says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down the right hand in front of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart in your struggle against sin. You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. So this sounds like an Easter thing, right? He endured the cross. We're talking about the cross. Well, I'd like to talk about this for a little bit. The pioneer and perfecter of our faith. or I guess other translations say like author of our faith. It's a little weird because he's talking about running a race. So there's actually a range of meaning for pioneer. The Greek word is archegon. It could mean chieftain, prince, pioneer, author. I personally like forerunner. It literally means the person who went first, the person who goes ahead. And so Jesus went before us in the race. And then perfecter, the Greek word for perfect is related to telos, which means like our will or like the end goal. So he didn't like run the race perfectly. That's not what he's trying to say. He did, but he finished the race. And we can like look at him and be like, oh, he went first. He finished this race. I can also run this race because he did it first. But this is my main point. What was the joy set before Jesus? Oftentimes we think, oh, it's so that he can welcome people into the kingdom. Well, that's part of the picture. But he says in Hebrews 2, what actually this whole picture is, what the joy set before Jesus was. He says, when he put all things there, he was reading a psalm, and under his control might be mankind's control. Because he talks about he's comparing humans to angels. So when he's saying his right here, it means us. When he puts all things under mankind's control, he left nothing outside of mankind's control. Or it might mean Jesus. I know, it's confusing. At present, we do not see all things under his control, under man's control, under Jesus' control, but we see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by God's grace he would experience death on behalf of everyone. For it was fitting for him, for whom and through whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through sufferings. So the joy set before Jesus was the salvation of many brothers and sisters, not bringing of this salvation, but the completion of the salvation. And we don't see this happening yet, but we do see Jesus, who is now crowned with glory and sitting at the right hand of God. And we see that because we're going to finish this race and we're going to be crowned with glory and sitting at the right hand of God, or whatever. We're going to be up there with him. And things are going to be set right. And the same hope that the Jews had in the Old Testament is our hope too. That there is going to be an eternal kingdom. And the corrupt human rule will be put to an end permanently. And there will be justice. And Jesus came so that would happen, not so that we could be here in the church. This is part one of his plan. But the final part of the plan is for things to actually be put right. And so the celebration of Christmas is a celebration of God enacting this plan we're still in the middle of. So we stand between two mountains. One was Jesus coming the first time, and the second is Jesus coming the next time. It's confusing, like people don't agree on what's going to happen. And so it's easy for us to back away from end time prophecy or Old Testament prophecy because there's crazy conspiracy theories about what's going to happen, or Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door showing you graphs and charts that are weird. But this is the truth. We stand in a valley of the two comings of Jesus, and we can look back and be like, wow, yeah, what God started through Jesus' first coming is so awesome. But it's in keeping with looking forward to the putting right of all things. It is confusing when we read the Old Testament. It's confusing in one part because they didn't actually see the separation, the distinction between the first coming of Christ and the second. They actually saw God saying, yeah, I'm going to put everything right. And actually, they did see it a little bit, and they thought actually there were going to be two messiahs, but that's like a whole other story. They thought there's going to be a suffering servant in like Joseph, and then there's going to be a ruling king like David. There's lots of Jewish theories about all of that, the Messiah, and the secret is that there was just one Messiah, and he's going to come twice. And he is the ruling king, but he's not ruling right now, but he will come and rule. But he's ruling through the church, and that's New Testament theology. But in the Old Testament, we can read and see God's end goal in mind. And we shouldn't shy away from that because of the various theories. We should just read it for ourselves and be like, yeah, God's going to do this. I don't know how. I'm not going to run around and defend this view or that view, but I'm going to be excited that God's going to complete his purposes in the world. So yeah, we can look back on Christmas and look forward to the end. Why am I talking about this? I'm not really talking about this normal stuff. I'm talking about a weird thread that I tried to link together in the Old Testament. I took a class, Perspectives on the World Christianism, 3 or 4 years ago, unbeknownst to me with my wife. And it's a missions class, but it's not really a missions class. It's actually just church history, and there's a third of it devoted to missions, but the other 2/3 is just about theology and history, and basically trying to chart a course from Genesis to Revelation, trying to figure out where on the map are we, and how do we get to the end. There's some things that in that class that I felt were crazy, and other things that I felt were really intriguing. Some guy was like, yeah, the entire New Testament is devoted to Jews overcoming their racism, and that salvation was always for all people, and it's clear to see, clear as day in the Old Testament. So that actually, it set me on a path for multiple years of trying to was salvation always for all people? Was it clear as day? Were the Jews racist? Is that what the purpose of what Jesus was saying? It led me to read a very long book. It's actually 550-some page academic book by N.T. Wright called New Testament Before God. If you really want a whole lot of speculation on the psychology of first century Judaism and lots of different text reference, you can read that. It's kind of fun. I think it was before N.T. Wright started speculating about other things that make me a little concerned, but whatever. Yeah, read it. I listened to it in the shower. I had Alexa read it to me. And like I said, the world of prophecy and eschatology, the study of the end times, is rife with people making wild speculations and doomsday forecasts. You always see and the end's coming in 2022. But here's my point. You don't have to form opinions on every theological issue to have confidence in what the Lord's going to do and eagerly look forward to it. You should just know it. You don't need to debate about it. You don't need to defend some view. Just read it and be like, wow, God's going to do this. This is a book about prophecy. It only really shows one view. There's 50 different views, and you can come on different sides of the issue. But this is the book that I was given that I read. So that's a book. If there's better books you could read on prophecy, that's just the one I happen to read. I was going to have my wife, Paige, come up and talk about the benefits of reading the Old Testament. She just started reading, for whatever reason, started reading the Old Testament this year, so.
Yes, for whatever reason, James insisted that it had to be me and that he couldn't just share the story. Basically, I didn't know that I was going to have to share this, but we were having a conversation last week, and someone talked about this app on the phone that you could read through just read through the whole Bible, and then there's corresponding Bible Project videos that go with different themes and whatnot. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool and very interesting. And so it is, I think, a chronological thing too, and then it starts in the Old Testament. So since April, I've been reading a lot of Old Testament books, and it's actually been I know this might be strong, but I don't think it is too strong. I mean, it's been very life-changing and like helpful for me. I feel like even just reading the book of Leviticus, I feel like has gotten such a hard rap. Like so many people are like, "Oh, Leviticus sucks." And I mean, like, okay, it's a little bit hard to read. It's sometimes confusing. I mean, it's actually very confusing. But there's so many things that were said in Leviticus that I like in these past several months, like different conversations that people have had, or different other Bible story books, like in the New Testament, or things that I'm like, wow, like this is amazing. I actually understand why this thing happened because I read this story in Exodus, or because I read this story in Numbers or whatever. And yeah, I am like realizing that I don't actually understand a lot. And honestly, like while I'm reading the Old Testament, sometimes I'm like, I like in that reading, and I'm like, well, I don't understand any of that. And that was really confusing, and I don't feel great, whatever. But then I'm able to look back several months later and be like, okay, I read this, and that was like, I actually understand more of the Bible now because I read Leviticus, or because I read Exodus or Deuteronomy. And like, I understand, like, I used to be just like, why did God give so many laws? I don't understand it. But God gave laws because like, the people kept rebelling and not listening to him, and that wasn't his original intent. And I understood that now because I read the Old Testament. And so that was my spiel about, we're not talking about his teaching, but he's like, I want you to say that. So I'm saying it. Read the Old Testament, it's really good and helpful, and it'll benefit you.
Yeah, so this wasn't, I hope it wasn't your typical Advent teaching. I have some questions for discussion. I really just want to know, people talk about, your hesitancy to read the Old Testament, or your hesitancy to like trust Old Testament because the New Testament might like supersede it, or your relationship growing up in the church, like how people treated the Old Testament, or how people treated prophecy like that. I'm saying this all in part because we're going to start Exodus soon, a couple months from now. So I'm trying to prime the pumps so that you guys are like ready to go. But also so that you can see like Jesus coming was not a surprise. Like maybe the way he came, maybe the fact that he only fulfilled part of the whole story, the whole picture of the Messiah, of the day of the Lord, the Armageddon, whatever. Like that was a surprise. But the fact that he came when he did, or the fact that people were expecting him, and actually, if you read the early chapters of the Gospels, you actually meet a couple people who were expecting him, and they're like, "Wow!" So yeah, this is my teaching. Feel free to break up into groups. I'll pray right now, so because it's kind of weird if I pray like 15 minutes from now. You can talk. Don't feel like you're stuck. You can just pray and leave, or not pray and leave. Yeah, so I'll just pray. God, I feel like this teaching was kind of disjointed and lots of things to talk about. I just read a whole lot of random passages. I do feel like I'm throwing things at the wall and hoping they'll stick. But thank you that your word is like alive and active and really interesting, and can always learn new things. I pray that you would be giving all of us, I don't know, maybe quests to understand you better through your word. And that our curiosity, our intrigue would lead us to a deeper understanding of who you are, deeper understanding of your word, and a preparedness to anticipate what's happening in the future, and we can pray in confidence of what you're going to do. And I pray too that specifically that we would understand the meaning of your coming, and understand it through your own words this month. Amen.